In this tutorial, we will have a look how we can make this wall slide. As you can notice, we making wall slide. And before I jump into the coding part, I want to thanks Dumb Clips on the Internet for donating me on Patreon, as well as I want to thanks Sanesh Kethmin for purchasing source code on my Patreon page. And if you guys want to do that, then you can do it on Patreon, and by that you will unlock many benefits. And I also recommend my Unity 6 and C# programming courses on Udemy. The links will be available in the description, and by that you can support me. So without furthering delay, let's dive into this. To make our wall slide, what we will do, we're gonna open up our player skip. So let's select this player game object in the hierarchy, and let's open up our player skip by double clicking on it. So what we're gonna do, if we move over to Unity editor, we're gonna create a point somewhere around here, and from that point we're gonna create a circle. And if that circle collide with this wall, then what we're gonna do, we're gonna slide, and we need to assign this wall as a wall layer. But before we do, we need to do that. Let's assign this wall as a wall layer. To do so, I'm gonna move over to my grid game object, and I'm gonna select my this wall tile map, you can simply say, or you can select any game object and make sure you attach a collider, box collider 2D, or any collider 2D to that game object. And in my case, I'm going to select my wall, and let's go over to inspector. In the top right we can see layer, and it says default. So let's create a new layer for our wall. So let's click on this layer. In the top right we can see, and it says default. So just click there, click on add layer, and we're gonna create a new layer for our wall. So let's call it wall. And after doing that, make sure you hit enter, then select your wall game object one more time, then go over to inspector, and now assign with the layer that you recently created. So I'm gonna click on this layer default, and let's choose wall. Now I assigned this wall game object as a wall layer, a wall game object as a wall layer, as you can notice in the inspector. And now we're going to create a point from which point we just want to create the circle. So we will select our player game object in the hierarchy. Let's right click on it, create an empty child game object, and move that game object to something over here, and name it to something like checkpoint. As you can see, I already created a point over here. And if you want to choose any gizmos, then go over to inspector, click over here, and you can choose any gizmos you like. So from this point, I just want to create the circle. So now we're gonna open up our player skip by double clicking on it, and let's move over to our update function, or we can create a separate function for it, but I'm gonna do inside my update function. So let's do it something over here, and I'm gonna remove this wall slide function, or we can make a separate function for it. So let's make a separate function for it. So over here I have, so I'm gonna just do one more time. So we're gonna make this function public. It doesn't need to be public, so we can make it private instead. So we simply gonna type void, and if you just simply type void, it's basically means this function automatically by default it's gonna be private function. And we're gonna call this function to something like wall slide. So let's call it wall slide. Let's make first bracket and some curly brackets, and inside this function what we want to do, we just want to create the circle. And we do know that in order to create the circle, we need to use a function called, we need to a function called physics2d. So we're gonna use this physics2d dot overlap circle. And this function, as a first argument, it's gonna take the point from where we want to create the circle. So we have the point wall checkpoint, as you can see over here. So we need a reference of this point. And the second thing, it's gonna take the radius. So we also need to specify the radius. And the third argument, it's gonna take the game object that we want to check with. So we're gonna check with this wall game object. So as a layer mask, we're gonna pass our wall. So we need those variable. Let's make this one comment for now, the by double forward slash. And we do know that comments don't interrupt our code. And let's go to top of our class, and let's make those variable. Basically, we need, first thing, we need a point from where we want to create the circle. So we're gonna make public transform, which is responsible for position, and we can call this one wall checkpoint. So let's call it wall checkpoint. And the second thing, we need the radius. So let's make a public float, and we can call this something like wall check radius. So let's call it wall check radius. And by default I'm gonna set it to a smaller number, something like 0.2f unit. And the third argument, we need the layer mask or the game object that we want to check with. So we're gonna make a public layer mask, and we can call this one let's call it what is ground, or sorry, what is wall. Or you can simply, sorry, I'm really apologize, what is wall. And you can call it something like check layer, as well as another name. It's basically up to you what you just want to name it. And now I'm gonna press down Control S on my keyboard in order to save my script, and let's move over to Unity. So underneath my player script, we will able to see those variables. So the first thing will be our wall checkpoint. So we need to select our wall checkpoint underneath our player game object in the hierarchy, and we need to drag it over to that slot. So we're gonna have the point, and also we need to assign the layer mask. So we're gonna choose our wall only, since we want to check with our wall game object. So that's why. So just wait a moment, and once it's done, we can just go ahead and check that out. And now the script compilation is almost done, and we can see if we this will be empty, basically this will be none. So as you can see, this is none, basically means empty. So we're going to select our wall checkpoint, and let's drag it over to this wall checkpoint field. And what is wall? It's gonna be nothing. So what you need to do, what is wall, we're gonna choose our wall game object. Why? Because we just want to check our wall game object, so that's why. And now it's done, and we are ready to create the circle. So let's open up our player script one more time. Let's go over to wall slide function, and we have it over here. And let's remove these two forward slashes. So this physics2d dot overlap circle, as a first argument, it's gonna take the point. So we're gonna pass our wall checkpoint, and we're gonna access the position. So we're gonna type dot position, and the second thing, it's gonna take the radius. So let's pass our wall check radius, and the third argument, it's gonna take the layer mask. So we're gonna pass our what is wall, and we do know what is wall. We have chosen our wall game object. Now this function over here, it's gonna create the circle from this point, basically from our wall checkpoint, with this much of radius, and it's only gonna target our wall. And now this just gonna create the circle, and let's suppose the circle really collide with this wall game object. This then this function over here, it's gonna give us a true value. And if the circle is not colliding with that ground, then it's gonna give us a false value. So what we will do, we will store the result, basically whatever we collided with, we're gonna store it into a collided 2D. Why? Because this physics 2D overlap circle just gonna work as a collision. So that's why we need to type this collided 2D, a container type or a parameter type, and we can call this one something like call info or collision information. And let's set equal to this. So this call info right over here gonna be true or false, depending upon if the circle is really colliding with that wall game object or not. Let's suppose the circle collided with this wall game object, then this function over here gonna give us a true value. So that's why this call info over here, it's gonna be true, because we directly setting it, as you can see. And now what we're gonna do, we're gonna check. So we will use this if condition. Let's make first bracket and some curly brackets, and what we want to check over here, we basically want to check if call info is equals to true. Basically means that this circle is really colliding with this wall game object. So now what it's need to do, it basically need to play the slide. For now we're gonna print out a message. So for that we're gonna type debug.log to print out message, and we're gonna say something like slide, wall slide, or let's simply call it slide, and let's close that up with semicolon. And we're gonna press down Control S to save our script. And now if we move over to Unity, we're gonna check that, but we're gonna get a problem that we're not gonna able to notice our circle, because that function just creating, and we're not gonna able to notice that. So in order to create the circle or to draw the circle, we need to use another function. So for that we're gonna move over to our script one more time, and we will use on draw gizmo selected function, and let's do it in the bottom. You can do it anywhere you like it, basically it's up to you. So for that we're gonna use this on draw gizmo selected function, and this function by you it's just called by Unity, and make sure you just type as I did over here, and you can just remove this private if you don't like. And now this function just gonna draw, but before we draw we basically need to check if we assign it our wall checkpoint or not. If we didn't assign, then we need to stop drawing. So we're gonna check. So let's make if condition, let's make first bracket and some curly brackets, and we will check over here if wall checkpoint if it's not equal to null. It basically means it's not empty, means that we just selected this wall checkpoint and we drag it over to this wall checkpoint field, means we have the check. And if it's not equal to null, means that we assign it. And now we are ready to draw the circle. To draw that, we're gonna use this gizmos.draw function, gizmos.draw where sphere function, and this function as a first argument it's gonna take the point, so we will pass our wall checkpoint dot position, and the second thing it's gonna take the radius, so we will pass our wall check radius. And let's close that up with semicolon. Now it's gonna draw the circle from this wall checkpoint dot position with this much of radius. And if you want to choose a color, then before you draw your circle you can choose a color. To choose a color we're gonna use this gizmos dot color variable, and you can set equal to color that you would like to draw with. So I'm gonna draw with a yellow color, so I'm gonna set color dot yellow. You can choose any color, it's up to you. And now let's close that up with semicolon, and we're gonna press down Ctrl S to save our script. And now let's move over to Unity. So as soon as our script just gonna compile, we will able to notice that circle will be drawn from our wall checkpoint. And as soon as that circle just gonna collide with this ground, the message should be pop up in our console tab, says slide, as we just type. So as you can notice, we just created our circle now over here, and if that circle collide with this wall game object, then that message should be pop up says slide. So let's check that out. So I'm gonna click on this play button in the top in order to play my game, and let's have a look on this. So as soon as this circle just gonna collide with that ground, the message should be pop up. So let's have a look. So I'm gonna select my console tab, and let's say, so we getting a problem that it's not shaking. So basically what we have done, we're gonna get out of play mode. We're not able to see that basically the message, because we just created the function over here as you can notice, and we never calling it. So we're gonna call it inside our update function. Over here we're gonna call that. So let's call the function. So this line of code right over here, it's gonna be execute, means we will able to notice our message. So we're gonna call our wall slide function, and we do know that what wall slide function is really doing. It's basically creating the circle, and then it just printing out message if the circle is colliding with that wall game object. So we have done the mistakes there, so make sure you just take that out, and we're gonna have a look on it. So just wait a moment, and of course I will give a link in the description of this player sprite. You can just go ahead and check that out. And now if I just go ahead and then click on this play button in the top, and then select my console tab, the message should be pop up as soon as the circle collided with this ground. The message just gonna pop up says slide. So let's have a look by now. So if we collide, and indeed we can notice as soon as this circle colliding with this wall, we can notice in our console tab says slide message just getting pop up. So we're gonna get out of play mode. So instead of doing this, we basically want to slide. But before we slide, we just want to check if we standing on this ground and the circle is colliding with this wall, then we don't want to slide because we're gonna be in the ground. So that's why so we need to check, and also we just want to check if we're not moving to the left or right direction. If that is the case, so first thing we're gonna check if we're standing on this ground or not. If it's, then we don't want to slide, and also we just want to check if we moving left and right or not. and then we're gonna check if the circle colliding with this wall or not. So we're gonna check all of those parameters. So let's go over to our script and let's move over to slide function over here. So instead of printing out message, what we're gonna do, we're gonna check our if we're standing on that ground or not. So we're gonna use this if condition. Let's make first bracket and some curly brackets, and I already created a is ground parameter for it, and you can notice over here to just keep track of if we standing on that ground or not. So I'm gonna check over here if we standing on that ground. If it's equals to false, basically means that we are not standing on that ground. At the same time, we're gonna check if we not moving left and right. So if we not moving left and right and we standing on this ground, then then we want to slide. So we will, and also we're gonna check, and we also created this movement parameter right over here, right over here to just move left and right. So we will check if this movement is not if it's equals to 0. 0 if basically means that we're not moving left and right. And then so in this moment, what we want to do now, we want to slide. So firstly we checking the circle colliding with this wall game object or not, and we checking after that if we not standing on this ground, means we somewhere over here. And also we checking that if we not moving left and right, as you can see. So in this moment, what we need to do, means we are something over here, we not on this ground, that means we need to slide. So for that we're gonna use rb dot linear velocity. So we need a reference of this rigid body 2D component of this player game object, as you can see. And I already have the reference as if I open up my player script and go over to my start function, as you can see I already grabbed the reference. If you haven't, just do that, and once you are done, we can just do it over here. Now we can slide. And in order to slide, basically what we want to do, we just want to add a velocity in the bottom direction of this player game object. So we just gonna move over to this rigid body 2D of this player game object, and in the y axis, basically linear velocity in the y, we're gonna put a little bit down in the down direction. So we're gonna create a variable for our slide speed. So let's go to top of our class and let's make a public float, and we can call this one something like wall slide speed. Let's call it wall slide speed. And by default I'm going to set something like 2f or 2 unit, 2f, something like that. And now we're gonna move over here. So we are ready to slide, and in order to slide, we're gonna go over to rigid body 2D, basically rb in my case, and then we're gonna access the linear velocity in the y, and I'm gonna set equal to minus wall speed slide, slide speed. Why I just put minus? Because I want to bring my player game object in the down direction, so that's why. And now that's just gonna be fine, and we're gonna press down Control S in order to save our script. And now let's move over to Unity. So as soon as the circle just gonna collide with that ground, and also we checking if we not standing on that ground, and also we checking if we not moving left and right, then what we doing, we just moving this player game object in the down direction with our wall slide speed. So let's click on this play button in the top in order to play our game, and let's take a look on this. So as soon as our circle just gonna collide with this wall game object, it's gonna slide down. So let's have a look on this. So if I just slide, as you can see, indeed it's doing. But as soon as we colliding with this ground, then it's not sliding, as you can see, because before we sliding, we just taking is ground is equals to false, basically means it's not on the ground, as well as we checking if the movement is basically 0. And now it's doing good, and you can do the animation. So I'm gonna get out of play mode, and we have the wall slide animation, but I'm not gonna do it over here. So I'm gonna give a video in the description. You can go and check that out, that how you can make the animation transition, and how you can create the animation, which in my case wall slide. So I hope you get the idea that how you can do it. So as soon as the circle just gonna collide with this wall, then you can just play, basically you can create a parameter in order to play the wall slide animation. So I'm not gonna show you in this tutorial. So I hope you get the idea that how you can do it, and I'm gonna see you in the next tutorial.